Brian, Aaron just noted that Aroldis Chapman will not be on the postseason roster and he's not with the team, and there could be some disciplinary action. What have the conversations been like with either Aroldis or his people during this?
Yeah, the obviously we have not had our official postseason roster meetings, but he effectively took himself out of at least this round of consideration because, obviously as a team, we have everybody who's obviously part of our network here working out starting Friday, and he made a decision not to show, and so I fined him. Obviously, I had a conversation with him. I fined him for not being here at a mandatory workout, and Aaron Boone post workout had a conversation with him, and during that conversation, I wasn't a part of that. Boone made the decision, just telling him to just stand down and just stay home. You got to be all in. At this time of year, and it's disappointing. So that he effectively made that type of decision. He was due to pitch a live BP, obviously to get his work in as he was competing for a spot on the roster, as well as facing our hitters to give them that type of competition as we navigate the off days between the wild card series and our division series is about to start Tuesday. And again, I can't give any more information than that. It's just disappointing. So we're gonna have what we have here, and people who are competing to dying to be on this roster and fighting to be on this roster and want to be on this roster. And even though those decisions haven't been made yet, he again chose to be absent. So after the Texas series, we had that off day we provided for everybody in between, and he flew from Texas to Miami, to spend the off day there, and then chose not to come Friday to the workout. So nothing really more to add.
What do you think of the matchup with the Guardians, and how do you feel like your roster stacks up?
Well, we're gonna have an advanced scouting meeting, later today. I think around 2 or 2:30, and post workout. So I'll get a little bit more intel on these guys. We've faced them 6 times this year. We know how good they are. Listen, anybody in the postseason, they're really good, right? They've earned their way to be here, and the operations that have been pushed out now, whether it's Toronto or Tampa, or St. Louis, those are top-notch, operations and top-notch teams that are more than capable as well. So to be in the postseason, you've done a lot, and to be able to advance, obviously, you're doing a lot. And so I know that Cleveland's got great pitching, both out of the rotation and the bullpen. I know they got a great defensive team. They're young, they're athletic, and they're run by one of the game's all-time great managers in Terry Francona, and one of the game's best executives, under the leadership with his staff of Chris Antonetti. So we know we got our hands full. There's a lot of respect we have for the Guardians and their operation from top to bottom, and so we'll learn a lot more about them here later this afternoon as we continue to get our team ready for Tuesday night.
Over to the left, Brendan, and then Lindsay.
Cash, Boone said that Chapman gave an unacceptable excuse as to why he didn't show up Friday. What was that excuse?
I wasn't part of his conversation, so I know I had my own conversation with Aroldis, and it wasn't an excused absence. He obviously was due. Everybody was due to be here for a workout every day, and all the specialty coaches, communicate with their responsible player group about what their coming day's work is going to be. And Matt Blake had communicated with Aroldis about his live BP on Friday, and our interpreter, who was on the phone with me interpreting with Aroldis, he was in communication with Aroldis, sharing, it's Marlon Abreu, sharing and reiterating when he was supposed to be here. So there's no, there was no legitimate reason why he wasn't here. He's employed, he's due to provide work. Postseason roster hadn't been set yet. We hadn't even had our meetings yet. We still haven't had that meeting yet. And he chose not to come. So.
And what did you see out of DJ LeMahieu the last week or so of the regular season?
I see somebody that's fighting, to be a part of things. He's obviously compromised with an injury, and he's trying to put himself in the best position to show what he is capable of doing. All by limited, and then he recognizes and understands that puts the onus on us on our end, whether from my chair to more importantly our manager and our coaching staff, about is there a fit, can he contribute, what can he provide. So he's certainly competing and showing everything that he's made of, because he wants to be a part of a winner and he wants to be in a position to contribute. I don't think he or anybody doesn't want to be a part of something if they can't help. But that determination hasn't been made yet. But what I've seen so far is someone fighting, which I appreciate, so.
Chris.
Given the uncertainty of the bullpen, do you feel like you have enough with that group to advance as far as you'd like? We're
going to find out. I feel like we just have to feel comfortable that whoever's, on this roster is all in, right? They're laser focused on whatever I can do, whether I'm the best in the world at it, or if I've fought my way into this mix as part of this group, that whenever, Aaron Boone and calls upon them to, play a role, that they're going to give everything they're capable of giving. And there's no hesitancy. There's no distractions. There's no, our laser focus is to try to find any which way possible to beat Cleveland. And so we're going to find out. I think, we have a lot of talent in that room. Thankfully we've got some guys coming back from injuries. Certainly some of them pitched very little towards the end when they came back off their IL stints, but they're healthy. And so ultimately it'll be, an interesting roster discussion that we are to have soon. The reason we haven't had those yet is because of our workouts here, and there's certain things we want to see, certain information we need to get, whether it's from our training staff, our medical staff, by what these players obviously are able to provide here in the coming days. So, but I'll feel confident with whatever we have, because I know we have a good group in there and they're really talented. So,
Ron and Eric.
Was Araldis's reasoning essentially that it looks like I'm not going to be on the roster for the division series, so that's why I didn't show up?
I don't want to speak for Araldis. I had my conversation with him, and I can say I've had conversations with Araldis in season, as well as our coaching staff in season, as well as our manager. So it's unfortunate that he wasn't here Friday. Clearly disappointing, but at the same time, not surprised by how things have started to play out over the course of the season. So it was surprising at first, like a little shocking, but then after the shock wore off, it's, when you add everything up, it's not surprising. There's some questions about whether he's been all in or not, for a little while, and he's maintained verbally that he's in, but at times actions don't match those words. So when he didn't show on Friday, obviously it was at first, yes, there was a lot of people upset and caught off guard, but then after that wore off, the focus is on the guys we have here currently, and that's what we're going to focus on.
I'm trying to remember, has there ever been another player who didn't show during your time here?
No.
Eric.
Brian, is it a concern, or how much of a concern is it not having a set closer going into the postseason?
Well, our hope is that our set closer is going to be Holmes, but I know that we've been forced to mix and match. So I guess in fairness, to your question about what we've typically had going in is a direct line of getting the ball to a very specific person, and that current situations in question. But we've been forced to mix and match here along the way, and we've had a number of different players show what they're capable of, and so I think Aaron Boone with Matt Blake, as well as Mike Harkey and Desi, relying upon also Mendy's contributions in that dugout with Tanner Swanson too is just what are the matchups? Who's available that day? What lane is the best for this particular guy? They'll do all their work like they always do. They'll line it up, and then whoever he chooses to pick, it's going to be the way to go, and hopefully it's enough. So I noticed last night, and in a game with our crosstown rivals, the Mets, Showalter drew on, currently the best closer in the game in Diaz, right? And they called him in the 7th inning, and so that meant somebody else was going to have to help close out the game, regardless of the run differential at the time, and for the 8th and 9th inning. And so in postseason, it's all different, and every day plays out differently. And you saw a game yesterday in Cleveland where it went 15 innings, and every inning was a closer. Whoever either team had out there was trying to close it. It was obviously Cleveland's end, because they could have the walk off, but and that they were calling on different casts of characters, whether it was starters coming out of the pen or relievers you're used to seeing. But every inning was high leverage, and ultimately that's the true case is postseason. Every inning is high leverage, whether you're starting the game or trying to finish the game one way or the other. Each and every inning is high leverage. So, it's at the end of the day, it's not going to matter, but that's how we are set up currently, and that's how we're going to play it.
And then the separate talk of it, how much discussion behind the scenes was there of starting somebody other than Garrett in game 1?
You'd have to ask Aaron Boone that. Aaron, as a manager, he decides.
He didn't answer it, so I figured
Listen, I think I think the one thing I can represent is that there's a lot of thought and conversation that goes into every decision he makes. He relies on his staff. I think we have a great coaching staff. I think Boone's done an amazing job, and I think he puts all the work in that's necessary, and then he comes up with a decision that he feels is best to help this franchise, match up at least this next round, and hopefully rounds beyond that. But I can tell you a lot of thought went into it, regardless. Who to go with 1, who should go 2, who should go 3, and he's got his reasons on it. But I feel really good about our starting rotation, no matter who we deploy.
Lindsay.
Ash, what are the other events that led you to question whether or not Aroldis was really all in this year?
I'm not going to go through it, other than it's what I said. So I'll just leave it at that. And he's obviously had a great career, really talented. Most of his time with us thus far has been exemplary, and this year's a struggle. And obviously, dealing when you're used to being superhuman, and then you deal with adversity, obviously I think people deal with it differently. And this year was a struggle for him, and at times you saw the flashes of there it is, and then there's other times it disappeared, and he was fighting through it, I'm sure. And but it doesn't make this game's not easy, but you don't need to make it harder by, again, not showing up at a mandatory workout. And for yourself as you compete for postseason, as well as for your teammates who are in there right now fighting to be ready when called upon, and to try to put themselves in the best position so they can have success for us and for our city and for our fan base. That's the job, and he chose not to be a part of that as of Friday for whatever reason. So,
Brian.
Brian, now that Aaron Judge's regular season's in the books, what do you think allowed him to take his game to another level this year? Why do you think he was able to do that?
I mean, he's a great player, who bet on himself, and it's the all-time best bet, right? The way he, navigated the season. Obviously he was healthy, and what he's capable when he's healthy. He's always putting up huge numbers when he stays healthy, and now he's shown he's stayed healthy now for a number of years. But it's a remarkable accomplishment. It was very special to watch. First and foremost for his mom and dad, and his wife, so his immediate family. But obviously it captivated the entire baseball world. And obviously doing it while you're on a team, that's winning 99 games and competing for a postseason berth and for a division title, and just made it that much more special for this franchise and for our fans. So, really, it was a great gift that he gave to the industry and to our fan base for what he was able to accomplish. So it was amazing to watch.
You talk about the bet that he placed on himself. Obviously, there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. Where do you stand with that? What is your next move?
Yeah, there's a pot of gold there. It's yet to be determined what the gold, how much it weighs, but it's a pot of gold, no doubt about it. So, good for him. It was already a big pot, and obviously it'll be bigger. But he's put himself in an amazing position to have a lot of choices, and clearly, obviously, we'd like to win the day on that discussion, and that's obviously for another day. But we said that before the season. We said that many times during the season, and if you need to hear it again, I'll say it again. Yeah, of course, we'd love to have Aaron Judge back as a New York Yankee, but that's all for another day.
Take a couple more. Dan.
Was the leg tattoo, part of the issue with Chapman? With the decision to have that during the season, was that a problem?
I mean, it was unfortunate. I don't recommend. I certainly hope that all athletes in all sports choose not to do, get ink put on in season during their playing seasons, because there's always the risk of having a infection, which would take you offline, and that happened. Obviously, he didn't make that happen on purpose. I don't think it's a wise decision for any athlete to get ink, but no, that is not. That was frustrating to lose access to him for a period of time. But at the time that was going on, our biggest focus was for his health, because it was a serious infection at the time, and until it gets contained, you don't know how serious it could be. So you wanted to make sure that he got all the best medical care possible, so he healed up properly and it didn't become complicated and cause other issues. So thankfully that resolved over time in a healthy way for him and his future. But it wasn't a great decision, and hopefully that circumstance will give pause to anybody that's an athlete, worldwide, regardless of sport. I know ink is very popular and amongst many people, and I think just time and place when you choose to decide to go ahead and get some put on you. I wouldn't recommend it in season ever for anybody.
And with Judge, I mean, coming off this season that he had, it seems almost impossible to see him leave this team. Do you have that in your head that's a possibility, that he could end up somewhere else after the season?
I mean, when they earned the right to free agency back in, what was it, 70s? So when that was a game changer. So, and since that time, many players left, and gone somewhere else. So, so free agency gives people the ability to have, control of their decisions of what's best for them and their family, and where they want to be moving forward based on a lot of information that, they'll be gathering. So, so I think that history since the 70s and since the advent of free agency shows that, players have changed organizations, but certainly, we always compete to try to keep what we would like to keep, and in some cases we're successful, in other cases we're not. We always try to compete and try to take free agents from elsewhere, and sometimes we've had a lot of success there, and other times we haven't. But it's part of the market process. So that's, again, all for another day. So,
last one, Matthew.
Aaron mentioned that he's not ready to rule Chapman out for the ALCS or the World Series should you advance. Do you feel like that's fair to the other players who you mentioned are, dying to be on this roster, that someone who no-showed a playoff workout could potentially make the roster over them?
I I had my conversation with Aroldis and his agent, several with his agent, and with Aroldis Chapman as well. I also strategically and purposely left a decision with the manager in charge of his players in his clubhouse. So the conversation that Aaron Boone had post-workout on Friday with Aroldis, I wasn't a part of. I didn't hear. I wasn't on the other end listening. If I was, I would have identified myself being on the call. So Booney called Aroldis, whether it was from his office or from home, I don't know where, and had a conversation. And from that conversation, he called me and said, he made a decision that he told him after that conversation, he told him to stay home for this round. Don't come up now. Yeah, obviously, we could have mandated him being up here for Saturday and then Sunday and then Monday, and and see if we, if he put himself in a different position or whatever. But that conversation Boone had with Aroldis, whatever it was, Boone, he said, I told him to stay home and don't come, and so that was his decision, and that was his authority, which I support, and it's also his read, I think, of what's best, to your question, for this clubhouse and for the teammates that were here Friday on time and going full bore into their workouts, whether it's treatment related or conditioning, or obviously batting practice or throwing bullpens or live BPs or whatever it was supposed to be. So he made that decision. So I suspect it had a lot to do with factoring into what's fair and best, for the entire group. Rather than having somebody, decide to pick and choose when they want to be in and when they don't want to be in. But I don't want to speak around Boone for that. But I suspect that's part of it for him, and it'd be understandable if it was. So, but I also know that people can make mistakes, people can screw up, and if there is enough, feeling of I made a mistake or what have you, and they have those appropriate conversations and considerations in the future, could be different. So as of right now, he's not on the ALDS roster. He's put himself in a position not to be considered on for the ALDS roster, which has not even been decided yet by his actions. And if future considerations, if he wants to be in position for future considerations, I think there's future conversations that probably need to take place, for that. So I would not rule anything out. I think we all just have to address the elephant in the room is when you go walk in there, or you're in the clubhouse, you're on the field, you're not going to see him. So, and that's the reason why. And I'd rather not have to speak to that, but you're good at what you do. You'd find out anyway. So you'll see it.
Okay, Cash, thank you again for the time. That'll conclude the interview room for today.